This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
We welcome you to a special edition of Real Talk as we celebrate Black History Month through the month of February. Of course, we assume, hope, trust that you have been learning new details, maybe hearing some new stories about Black history in your part of the country. Of course, we'll be focusing most specifically today on our home province of Alberta, but there is a rich and storied history of across the nation in Canada of contributions made by Black Canadians in many different industries and many different fields. We're grateful today that two professors from Athabasca University will be joining us to share their personal perspectives and to shed light on Black history through Alberta over more than a century. Details on that coming up in 30 seconds. We want to let you know that this episode would not be happening without the support of sponsors, partners like our friends at Verifiable Credentials. You've probably heard those stories, credential fraud on the rise, whether it's nurses, oil patch workers, personal support workers like those working with seniors in long-term care. There's been stories in the news of people faking their credentials, essentially saying they are who they in fact are not, saying that they are certified or equipped to work with populations when that is not the case. Luckily, there's an innovative technology. This is the future right now that's making credential fraud a thing of the past. And we're starting to see governments, including in Alberta, look to things like digital verifiable credentials because they're secure, they're cloud-based, and basically you can't forge them. Verifiable credentials are tamper-proof, independently verifiable. They use open web standards, and with We Know training, they can plug seamlessly into your training courses. If this is on your radar, if this is an issue in your industry and you want to learn more about using verifiable credentials in your training or credentialing program, it's simple. Just visit verifiablecredentials.ca. Well, Black history in Alberta is a rich and diverse tapestry that spans more than 100 years. The Black community has contributed significantly to Alberta's cultural, social, and economic development. More than 100 years ago, Black settlers arrived in Alberta seeking opportunities and facing challenges like racism, segregation. More on that in just a moment. The vibrant communities, you may have heard of Amber Valley, of Wildwood, emerged as important hubs for Black settlers. Through the years, Black Albertans have made enormous contributions in Alberta, including education, sports, arts, politics. You've heard of pioneers like John Ware, a skilled cowboy, Violet King, the first Black Canadian lawyer, just a couple of examples. Also, I suspect that we'll get into the civil rights movement today, how it had an impact up north of the U.S. border, leading to an increased awareness and advocacy for equality. But of course, this history is not without its stains. And today, as we dedicate this Friday Real Talk Roundtable to Black History Month, we endeavor to get into it all. And we're grateful that we have two expert perspectives that are going to help school us today. Dr. Veronica Fynn Bruey holds 6 degrees from 4 continents. She has more than 25 years of research experience, if you can believe it, in more than 30 countries. She's an assistant professor of legal studies at Athabasca University. She identifies as an Indigenous Liberian war survivor and a migrant to Canada. Dr. Chika C. Daniels has almost 20 years of experience, cross-sector experience in architecture, investment management, private equity, business advisory and development, and community development, which has culminated in her teaching at 2 of Canada's most respected institutions, the University of Calgary and Athabasca University. Chika is a multiple awarded entrepreneur, innovator, and leader who continues to be invited to speak on related themes across the country. Doctors Bruey and Daniels, welcome to Real Talk, and thank you so much for making time for us today.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
My understanding is that the two of you have paired up already on an important and well-attended event presented by the Athabasca University Students Union, commemorating and celebrating Black History Month. Dr. Bruey, what did it mean for you to participate in that, and what might be the general theme of the message that you wanted to make sure you delivered to students?
First of all, thank you so much, Ryan. And thank you so much for giving us the opportunity and giving me the opportunity to share my story. As I said to you in the email, usually I don't get called on, I don't get recognized, I don't get the spotlight. And in any case, I try to avoid the spotlight because with the spotlight as a Black immigrant to this country that is so racist, your spotlight mean intimidating other people or making other people feel threatened. And so then you're put in a position of questioning why you even want to appear in these media appearances. So I appreciate it. And honestly, I wouldn't have done it without Chika because having her support and pairing together, since we've already done it, as you said, it just makes me feel more comfortable that I'm not alone and I can share that experience with her. So the event we had at
Can I
Athabasca
interrupt
University,
for 1 second? Can I just thank you so sincerely for starting this episode in such a real way? I want to stop and recognize that for a second. Like, that means a lot to me. I know it means a lot to this audience, and I also don't take lightly what you're saying, which is deplorable, and we'll get into that. But before we get into the bigger picture stuff, that means a lot to me that in your first 30 seconds on the show, you kept it real. That's what we try to do every single day. So thank you for that.
you're welcome. I think the approach that you take and how you received us also reflect our ability to feel welcome and real. So you too, I said thank you because the approach you use is just very genuine and very accepting. Because I always question, as a Black woman, I always question invitations, especially from white people. I'm like,
Sure.
what do they want from me?
What are they looking for? Yeah.
Yes. So, but your approach was very positive and constructive and welcoming. So that's a reflection. So what you give out is what you receive, and that's what I'm reacting to. So thank you as well. Regarding our presentation at Athabasca University, for me, it was a personal experience, and it's always been a personal experience. My goal personally was to ensure that people forget about all that flair and glamour that is associated with, oh, she's got 6 degrees, oh my gosh, she's teaching at a university. Forget about all that, because at the core of these experiences is a human being, and a human being that is Black, and a human being that is from Liberia, and a human being that identifies as an Indigenous person, and a human being who is a Liberian. I wanted that to be the most important aspect of that presentation that students would take away, because I think, honestly, in our experiences as human beings, as we traverse different dispensations and wars and conflict and violence across the globe, we forget that very basic but core aspect of being human beings. And honestly, we all want the same thing: to be happy, to be accepted, to be respected. And if you can't see that because your skin color is white, or whatever color you want to define it, then you have a serious problem.
Dr. Daniels, Dr. Bruey opens with just such a wonderful personal perspective, obviously indicating that we've got some problems as a nation, and that folks experience in Canada. People are not immune to experiencing things like racism, discrimination, intimidation. But how much of what she said, I mean, I was watching you listen to her, and obviously what she was saying was resonating with you. How much of that might mirror your experience, or how different might your experience be?
Well, first of all, Ryan, thank you for having us. I know Veronica's thanked you, but I do also want to thank you. And honestly, when we heard from you, the approach you applied when you contacted us and saying, you know what, you just want to hear our thoughts, so you're not going to dictate what we talk about, and we should just come here and be free to express ourselves. And I really want to applaud you for that. Many times when people are invited to sessions, the things we say are kind of we're kind of steered in the direction that conversation should go, right? There's this desire to keep it, aligned with what the host or what the organization, is championing or advocating. So first of all, thank you as well for just that clean invitation, blank slates that you've offered us. And so we're really grateful for that. I mean, absolutely. Dr. Bruey just has a way of really saying what people are thinking, especially Black people. And honestly, I don't know there's any Black person who lives in diaspora who hasn't experienced some kind of discrimination. And sometimes it is quite glaring. Other times it's very subtle. There's in conversations, in comments, in things like saying, oh, you know what, Dr. Chika, we know you're brilliant. We know you're that. Maybe wait till next year and then we can think of if we can promote you. So there's all these subtleties that arise, that, and it makes you feel as if, oh, maybe there's change. But you realize that these are things that are keeping you in place, and they want to just maintain a facade of being organizations that recognize diversity, equity, and inclusion, but not quite so, but it's just really superficial, right? And honestly, Ryan, it lends itself to what Black History Month has begun to represent across several contexts, where, there's the fanfare of Black history. And at that time, you realize that organizations are very aware that there's brilliant Black people in their cities, but only in February. Come and speak about issues, to come and be on flyers with their executive directors, to come and, lead or, anchor conversations. And then after February, it all dies down. So what Dr. Bruey and I are really wanting to speak about today mostly is that Black history is not just in February, it's February and forever. It really needs that aspect of longevity, right? So basically.
The majority of our audience will listen to this on the podcast. They're going to listen to the audio version of this, and then some of our most engaged audience is going to be watching this. And those that are watching on YouTube can see Dr. Bruey listening to you, and she is just nodding her head. It's like is nodding and nodding, and obviously this message from Chika is resonating with you. In particular, it seems to me you got a real chuckle out of when she said the executive directors of your organizations, the CEOs of your companies, want you to appear in photos. They want to put you on the playbills. They want to put you up front and center in February, but not through the rest of the year. And you alluded to this yourself, Veronica, talking about your own academic career. This is the type of thing that people may say, but hang on, it's 2024. I thought that we were past this stuff.
Absolutely, Ryan. I mean, the truth is we have to learn to add humor to this dehumanizing experience, because otherwise you won't survive. And for me, specifically as a war survivor who's gone through the worst of humanity, I sit back and just honestly add a little bit of mischief to these presentations, allyship, and we are doing something, EDI. That's a curse word for me. I never use that word anymore because it's so adulterated and contaminated with all kinds of sinister behavior that I try to just not associate myself with EDI. Because when Dr. Chika was saying that, that was what I was thinking about. How many times have I been told I just have to be the poster? And I mean, honestly, I don't want to put people on the spot because there's certainly ethical issues here. I don't want to get death threats. I don't want to get emails. I don't want any of that bullshit. I just want to live my life, please. So I'm not going to call anybody's name. But, as Dr. Chika was speaking, I was just thinking about an exact situation where I had a most devastating experience to the point of being homeless and needed my university to assist me. But after many years, they realized I was good enough to be recognized. And now, when they were interviewing me, I wanted to talk about that really devastating experience. Oh no, can you just tune it down? You create the worst situation in human lives, for example, like colonization and slavery, but yet you expect us to imbibe and stomach those really devastating and life traumatizing experience and pretend as if we are subhumans. We have no feelings. And whenever we are expressing or responding to those pain, it is at the disposal of the white person or the white colonizer or the settler, because we are always the other. So yes, a lot of things she said, I'm just like, Reach it, sister.
Keep it up. I would just want to jump into our live chat here on YouTube. Garth says, now this is going to be real talk today. Ben says, I already know that I'm going to need to rewatch this episode. So that's great. Keep the comments coming on our live chat. You can also shoot us an email. I keep my inbox open through the show to talk@ryanjesperson.com. If you're just joining us on the Mixler live streaming audio app presented by California Closets, you were just hearing from Dr. Veronica Fynn Bruey, Dr. Chika C. Daniels also joining us from Athabasca University. It was interesting. We had a lot of talk about EDI, equity, diversity, and inclusion initiatives. I think prompted, if I can say, I mean, a lot of people have been talking about it. We've been going back almost 2 years on this show, talking to experts that have chimed in on whether or not it hurts a company's stock price if it's publicly traded, if the public sees value in EDI investment or initiatives. But most recently, it was the richest man on planet Earth, Elon Musk, that basically tweeted that EDI is racist. And it actually got everybody talking. What would be your assessment of that, Dr. Daniels? You don't look convinced.
Well, I mean, Ryan, EDI is really just a very polarizing topic now, right? I am convinced that the premise of EDI has been so adulterated. The whole essence of EDI, and I'll try to kind of say this before I answer your question, Ryan, and speak to what you're mentioning, is the whole premise of EDI was that in countries like Canada, where by the end of the year, we're going to be 40% multicultural. The essence of EDI is that in countries like this, where there's a fantastic blend of ethnicities and cultures and all these different things, right, is that within all these different communities, there are people who are exceptional. But because there's an original population, for instance, in Canada, Caucasian, a lot of the attention is directed to them because they are born here, they've been trained here, they've studied here. And so they are sort of grown or developed or trained to function in this society, right? So EDI is advocating the fact that irrespective of our backgrounds, we're equally educated. And dare I say that Black people are the most educated people on the planet. You know, I mean, it goes without saying, many Black people have at least 2 degrees. I remember growing up in Nigeria, where at 26 people had a PhD, you know, and it wasn't anything phenomenal. It was almost commonplace, right? So EDI is saying that within all these different cultures and all these different, communities now resident in this new society, they are able to, with what they have, still be exceptional enough and valuable enough to be brought into all the different layers and levels of society. Now, people are thinking otherwise, which is that EDI is a pity party, where just because you want to, meet certain quotas, in terms of, representation, so they're just kind of picking people and they're filling in slots. But that's wrong. So EDI is saying that despite our backgrounds and being trained, in different contexts, there are people who are able to bring value to all these different works of life, and because of that, we need to now redirect some attention that would typically go to these original inhabitants, to these people as well, because we live here. We're adding significantly in terms of value to this economy as well, and therefore we should be at the table. We should be able to talk about the experiences we bring that are able to positively influence and benefit this new setting. And so to say that EDI is racist is, honestly, I think is flawed. And I mean, it is flawed, but because EDI isn't performing what it is supposed to, there's also issues of EDI being kind of a facade. And what you see now, right, if I may add this statement as well, is that organizations are hiring from all these different ethnicities, but not hiring them and putting them where they should be. So for instance, I know of many organizations who want to say, you know what, we're 20% Black, but what are they doing? What are they doing in those organizations? They are cleaners, they are security staff, they are bookkeepers, they are maintenance. And this, not to say that these aren't good jobs, but the people in these jobs are typically way overqualified for them. And so it does really skew the value that EDI is supposed to bring to any organization or to any group. So if it's properly applied, there's fantastic value. And personally, if I can give an example, I do run a nonprofit where it is intentional in its recruitment. We don't duplicate from ethnicities because there's such a fantastic blend in Canada, Ryan. So if I'm a Nigerian, I wouldn't want to hire another Nigerian. I mean, there's people that I can hire who bring a different perspective to things. So why bring someone who is probably going to think the exact same way that I think? What are we doing? So we can hire a Caucasian. We can look into gay communities. We can hire people who are from Ethiopia, from Zambia, from the US, from Australia, all these different people who we know now call Canada home and who are coming here to add value as well. So yeah, I think I'll put a pin in my spiel to let Dr. Veronica give her thoughts as well.
Let me say, it's like, I just want you guys to keep letting it flow because you're inspiring this audience, and I can't wait for this podcast to drop because I know people are going to love it. If you're just tuning in, that was Dr. Chika Daniels also talking to Dr. Veronica Fynn Bruey in our live chat. Noob Try Again says, I really appreciate their uncut honesty, says it's very admirable that these two are being so open and vulnerable about their experiences. This is true strength. Noob says, one love on this special edition, this Black History Month celebration on Real Talk. When we come back from this quick break, I want to ask you about your personal experience. And Dr. Bruey, I want to circle back to the thing. I mean, you talked about intimidation, racism you've experienced in Canada. Both of you have immigrated to Canada from different nations. I want to talk about that experience. The Canadian population is growing and is forecasted to grow dramatically over the next couple of decades. We want to better understand, as people born and raised here that don't have other frames of reference outside maybe having the luxury or privilege of traveling, what you Canadians experience and what people that immigrated to Canada may continue to experience for decades. That coming up in just a moment. You know, Real Talkers, that this conversation is presented by our friends at Athabasca University, who want to remind you that the reason that tens of thousands of people from coast to coast to coast are trusting AU with their post-secondary experiences because of the world-class accredited online degrees and courses that are specifically designed so you can complete your education wherever and whenever it works for you. The only commute is ever going to be to your device. If you need to take time away for a family vacation, maybe an illness, maybe you need to help out your parents, maybe you need to help out your kids, you're never going to fall behind because you are dictating the pace, the schedule of your studies. And that's probably why more than 94% of AU alumni that are polled say they're satisfied with the quality of their education. More than 92% of them report that they're working in a job related to their field of study. There's not a lot of post-secondary institutions that can boast those numbers. You can learn more about the AU Advantage today by visiting athabascau.ca. Hey, a shout out to those job seekers out there. Our friends at Kubi Renewable Energy are hiring right now in Alberta and BC. This is Western Canada's busiest solar installer. Of course, as they're approaching spring as well, they want to put on your radar. The sunny days are getting longer. This means increased solar savings are on the horizon. Kubi's committed to bringing exceptional service to its clients, going above and beyond to ensure that your transition to solar is a smooth one. Whether it's for your home to life, for job opportunities, to get a free quote, you can simply visit kubienergy.ca. And if your investment in your home, your business is more on the outside, we're talking landscaping, we're talking bringing spaces to life, we personally recommend Eden Landscaping. They've got more than 20 years of on-the-ground experience in central and northern Alberta. They listen to clients. They see their vision. They apply their expertise. And the next thing you know, bingo, you've got a space you're loving, a space you're using, a space that not only increases the value of your biggest investment, but also the quality of time you spend there. Work with Eden Landscaping. If you want shovels in the ground this spring or summer, I recommend you make contact with them today at landscapeedmonton.ca. We're talking to Dr. Chika C. Daniels, Dr. Veronica Fynn Bruey, both from Athabasca University. And Veronica, you opened strong, and you basically talked to us about your experience. To a certain degree, you shared with us what it's like, your perspective, how it's been shaped as a war survivor out of Liberia. But it sounds like your introduction to Canada was far from what most Canadians would desire it be. Can you give us a reality check, what it was like for you?
Absolutely. There's, like Dr. Chika, it's just so much to say, which is why, again, I'm so grateful for the opportunity. We have so much in our belly to share because we constantly stifle and stomp down, like somebody would say, there's always a white man sitting on our neck to prevent us from breathing. And so for that reason, we have all this richness within our belly, our stomach, and we want to share it, but we're exempted and literally dismissed and prevented from sharing it. So sometimes when you have these opportunities, it's almost like, oh my God, I just want to blast out and say all the things I've kept for over 45 years or 50 years that I've been existing.
Do it!
So, so I want to thank you again. There are a couple of things I'd like to highlight before I respond to your question. One, I honestly think it is sad and it's pathetic that people who have so much always appear to have so little. The culture we come from, we literally have nothing. And I can pinpoint very vivid instances in my young life growing up in Liberia where I didn't have things like a book. My mother has never bought me a book to read. But now I live in Canada and look at my bookshelf and look at my son's bookshelf, and still some people, especially white people, can manage to survive in this culture with so much ignorance and irrelevance and irrationality that make them treat us Black people or minority or people of color, treat us the way they treat us. So for my humble beginning, like I said, coming from nothing and coming to this country, of course, you're just so elated for the experience because you never had such an experience. How could somebody have so much knowledge, so much resources? And I just wanted that. So I arrived in this country with literally nothing. 2 suitcases and $20 in 2001. That's how I arrived in this country.
Wow.
As a refugee-sponsored student. It took me less than 10 years to add on 5 degrees. How is it now somebody is going to sit there with all these resources, never make use of it, and get angry at me? For what? What did I do to you to intimidate you that you are now threatened by the struggles, the trauma, the inhumanity I've endured and still endure that will prevent you from letting me to make use of those opportunities? Because once you acquire knowledge, you don't keep it in there. It is supposed to be used and shared, but you prevent us from, sharing our knowledge or translating our knowledge because you're now intimidated. How could she possibly? That's the question I always get. How could she possibly come to this country with nothing and now have 6 degrees and want to take over our whatever? And another sad thing about Canada is always pointing finger to the US, which personally I just hate. Always pointing finger to the US that, oh, the Americans are this, the Americans are racist. Why don't you sit down and look inside yourself and learn? Because it's not my job to teach you about Black people. It's not my job to teach you about anti-racism. In as much as I have to learn about all the stupid things that you taught, you imbibed and imposed it on me and forced me to learn, when it has nothing, absolutely nothing to do with my culture, my society, my way of thinking, my way of life. I was forced to learn. I mean, all the university institutions I've gone to, they are all very Eurocentric, dominantly Western. I had to learn that. That's not endemic to my background and my indigenous roots and my culture. Now, how is it that you can now have an excuse and put yourself in a place where you think because you have a lighter skin color, you have this complete authority over me, and constantly when I appear, that presence of my Black skin instantly invoke a sense of uncomfortableness, resistance. You're not welcome here. This institution was not created for you. This is not your place. Go back to where you come from, over and again. And this is my constant struggle in this country, even as I learn to also decolonize my own mind. My constant struggle. When is it that I will ever see our legal profession having Black people represented? When is it I will ever see laws that are so inherently racist and oppressive struck down and representing the so-called diversity that Canada claims to have? When is it that I will ever see my kind represented in the Parliament of Canada? Or when I go to Ottawa, I will see my kind, or I will see Indigenous representation in the Parliament. I remember asking that question in 2002. I had just immigrated less than 1 year in Canada. I appeared at the Parliament in Canada, in Ottawa, and I looked around, and there's just this presence of the Queen and the representation of English legal system. And I'm like, what the? Where are the Indigenous people in Canada Parliament? I mean, forget about me for a moment as a recent migrant to this country. But where is the Indigenous presence? You can't keep claiming that you're diverse only to a certain limit, a certain point. You have to sit back and really ask yourselves, and I'm speaking to the listeners, especially white Canadians in Edmonton. Sit back and ask yourself, why do you treat people of certain background the way you treat them? And be true to yourself in answering that question.
Yeah, I think of some of the most. It's funny, this conversation, I just want to get the hell out of the way. But I want to like add in tiny little points. I mean, you talk about Black politicians, Black people in Parliament. Then you touch on Indigenous politicians. I noted that Sharon, who happens to know is Métis, Sharon's been on this show before. She's in our live chat today. She was actually at COP27 as an Indigenous knowledge keeper. I mean, she is a formidable force. And she's saying, she says there are many parallels to Black history and Indigenous history in Canada, which is very interesting. But, 4 names popped up off the top of my head representing 4 of, in my mind, the grossest mistreatments of women in politics in the last, let's say, 10 years in Canada. And that's Selena Cesar-Chavanez, a bright Liberal MP, Annamie Paul, who had a very brief, a tragically brief tenure as the leader of the Green Party. I think of Mumalak Kakak, the NDP MP out of Nunavut, who cut short by her own decision and has never truly, I don't think, blown the doors off the story of hers. I'm waiting for her book to come out. And I think of Jody Wilson-Raybould as well in Vancouver. There's 4 examples. I guess at least 2 things in common. Number 1, that they're women. Number 2, women of color. So as a nation, it gives us lots to talk about. I appreciate you asking about representation and talking about opportunity. And obviously, Dr. Daniels, your experience, let me just remind people, some may be just joining the stream right now, architecture, investment management, private equity, business advisory, community development. You work in boardrooms. You work with people that control finances. You work with people that hire in big C-suites and executive jobs. Can you take us into your experience as a Black woman in these spaces? What do you think this audience needs to hear?
Well, I mean, Ryan, there's a lot actually,
Yeah.
So I do echo your thoughts in terms of the fact that we can't. I don't know that Black History Month has been able to really focus on the things that need attention. First of all, and I will get to your question. The thing that bothers me the most is that there is so much fanfare around Black History Month, but the meat, the substance of Black History Month is often left out. And those are things like this conversation we're having, which we really need to, which allows us to really spotlight what the real issues are and why Black History Month exists in the first place. It's not just a celebration of culture, but also there should be elements of recognition of intentional inclusion, and also an opportunity for people to kind of reflect on either they're for or against, and an opportunity to plan to do better, right? So Black History Month, I worry that, for years, even in the future, Black History Month will come and go and it will amount to nothing, and it will still be about, printing flyers that has all these, cultural fabrics, on them, and people are putting up things or wearing their own idea of what, cultural attire is for the Black community. And this is just a little part of what Black History Month is about, But now in terms of my own experience, as I've kind of, based on my cross-sector experience and, working in all these different, sectors and all that. I mean, again, just to my point earlier is that there isn't representation. And I know that this is about Black History Month and not a Black gender per se, but I do want to say also that Black women at the bottom of the food chain, Ryan, we are literally at the base of every single ethnicity. There's research that has shown for decades that we keep, we're the ones that suffer the most, in terms of being, the prejudice against us, getting the short end of the stick. It's always been the case. And so there isn't just an absence of Black people, but of Black women in leadership positions, which is why, and I know we all saw this, but the issue with the Harvard president was Claudine Gay was really a big deal, because this meant that, we thought that change was coming, and that promotion also had come because, we being at the bottom had suddenly gotten to the top of one of the most prestigious institutions across the globe. And maybe this would be an eye-opener to people that Black women really need to get their flowers, And then before we could even blink our eyes, it was over. And I don't know whether to say thankfully or not, but there is some good good occurrences that came from that. Is that we started to see that the media and people started to look into all the other previous presidents and saw that none of them was any better than Claudine Gay, and had even been even more problematic and had more issues attached to them. But because, again, their race wasn't in the forefront, they never really got investigated or really kind of scrutinized the same way that she was. So we see that across, just if I can spotlight our industry a bit more, Dr. Veronica and I were in academia, we see that, Ryan, 8% of the students in Canadian institutions are Blacks, but only 1.7% are instructors are Black. And if you think of the population of Blacks in Canada, and we make up now 5%, and these are only those who identify as Black, not those who actually look Black, who might be Black, but, want to kind of, maybe be more associated with the other mix, of their race, so there might be more of us. But like if you look at those figures, it does show you that there's a blatant and utter disregard for allowing Blacks to be represented. So and not just in academia. If you think about our government as well, if you look at parliament, there's only one Black person, one Black woman, Honorable Massey Ayin. There's in the Alberta government as well, there's only one Black person, or I think maybe one or two people, and they aren't actually cabinet members. They are deputy ministers, right? So I mean, Ryan, there's just such a lack of really honoring the skill sets and the knowledge and the education that we can bring to improve any context that we're in. Research also shows that Black people are the most resilient. Maybe that's why people constantly take the shit on us. Who knows? Black people are the most enterprising, where we have the highest tendency to make a difference in the places that we are. There's research to show all these things, but people are disregarding that because they say to themselves, I mean, just 30 or so years ago, these people were slaves. How can they now be leading? So it does really kind of cause one to think, how much more do we as a community need to do to prove that we have earned a place where our voices can really be, amplified? So I mean, there's an utter lack of representation for Black people in any sector, and it does really, I mean, it's a topic of conversation for sure that we can go on and on forever. The last time Dr. Bruey and I were on a panel together, one of the things we spoke about is how we need, to have more Black people who are even instructors, who are teachers, and what that means for the people that they teach or that they're able to supervise is that they are growing up acknowledging that Black people can teach them new knowledge. And that means that in future generations, they will also seek out Black people to work with, to identify as leaders, and decide, because based on experience that we've provided, that they're capable of delivering at any level and even many times superseding expectation. So I think that the issues with educational institutions not really allowing Black people to be instructors, but giving them other, responsibilities, administrative tasks, or other things that are what I would call demeaning based on the breadth of their education and experience, is wrong, and is only doing more harm than good, and it's causing a repetition for future generations to continue to see that Black people aren't worth anything. And so we have a chance as an institution, tertiary institution, to change that. Imagine I, as an instructor, I'm teaching my students who are most times 100% Caucasians, saying to them, I'm Nigerian, one of my degrees was earned in Nigeria, and I'm able to teach you guys, and so it changes the mindset. And that's what we need for people to appreciate Blacks, a paradigm shift, the thought process to change from one that shows them as Black people should be staff or should always be in subservient positions to one that allows them to see them differently. So the lens must change. And these are opportunities to change that in institutions where, the president is Black, instructors are Black, student union presidents are Black. Those are opportunities to begin to change the mindsets of generations that are coming after us. If we see now, as we see now, that the ones in our generation are really hard and fast, and it will probably take, a miracle from God to change people's minds at this point. So maybe we should focus on the younger generation, and see what we can do with them.
Can I interrupt?
Yes, please do.
A little bit of addendum to qualifies just a little bit of what Dr. Chika just said, especially regarding the fact that there's research that shows that especially Black women are noted for being quite resilient. When you look at a history of racism, as we know, it's very irrational, but claims that certain people have small brains, their skulls are smaller, are more closer to the ape family. And this is from evolutionary biology kind of thing. And these are the reason through that irrational aspect of imagining this is Eurocentric, Europeans classifying Africans, indigenous people as having small brains and not capable of being intellectual as white people. And this deep historical root coupled with religion, led to colonization and slavery. And the assumption that we are subhumans, not intelligent enough, but can be good workers. We can help produce what the white man wants. And so we are to be put to work and be owned as a property, as a chattel. That concept of racism, colonization, and slavery is so deeply rooted and ingrained. And of course, thank you for putting the picture up, because that's my history, which is, very much couched into slavery and the returnings of Black people to Liberia. That history is so important to learn that rather than, and when I say that I feel sad for white people who are so ignorant, they have so much resources and are not willing to learn, this is exactly what I'm referring to. That history or those histories need to be seriously learned, as Dr. Chika has alluded to. And white people need to really reflect and think about not burning the books, not excluding the books from the library, and face that uncomfortable aspect of their history. Yes, just imagine it. You are uncomfortable to face slavery and racism because your generation was the one that enslaved my people, and now you live in that privilege. You're uncomfortable with that. But think about my generation and my kind of people actually enduring the repercussions of what you've done. It's incomparable. But your uncomfortableness is okay to put you in a position where you don't want to learn and you don't want to learn our history so that you don't repeat and go back to Dr. Chika's point. So that aspect of thinking that Black women are resilient because we were considered from the very invention of racism, slavery, and colonization, we were thought of being subhumans. And so we are capable of absorbing the most dehumanizing experience, and yet the ability to persist to the point where, this professor in the US committed suicide. Because yes, the angry, strong Black woman, she can endure anything. She can go through the worst experience and still we can stomp on her and tomorrow she will rise up again. Personally, I refuse to take that position. And I'm not taking that position now that I have learned and realized my health and well-being supersedes any other thing that exists on this universe. So I refuse to occupy that position. Don't treat me as a superwoman. I go back to the song, I'm not your superwoman. Don't treat me as a subhuman. You go ahead and continue to do what makes you feel comfortable and accepted and white supremacist or whatever position you want to take. But I'm not going to give in to that warped ideology that has no bearing in evidence or reality that I'm a subhuman and I'm able to endure the worst of humanity. So thank you.
Thank you. I can't say it any better than Leslie in our chat, who says, this is incredible. Both of you are giving her goosebumps. So there you go. Typically, we'll wrap up our Friday roundtable conversations with a call to action, a chance for our guests to kind of sum up their message or give our audience almost a mandate or a directive or some homework or something to think about. To be honest with you, I feel like this entire conversation has been a call to action. So why don't we just treat these next couple of moments as making sure, and obviously we could talk for hours, but we're grateful for your time and respectful of it. just an opportunity to ensure that we're not missing something important in the context of Black History Month for our audience across the country, in particular Western Canada. Dr. Daniels, why don't you go first? What's something that you maybe haven't said already that you want people to walk with through the month of February and beyond?
Awesome. Thank you, thank you, Ryan. And I can't believe it's already 45 minutes since
I
we
know.
joined. And there is much more to say, but
Sure.
we'll keep that for another time for sure. But first of all, I do want to start off by saying thank you for the platform, Ryan. I mean, for you to lend your platform for such a fantastic cause, is really something worthy of note. So I appreciate that for sure. I want to say that, Black History Month, while we want to obviously not forget the years, of being mistreated, and owned like cattle and all that, as Dr. Bruey said, we also want it to be a time where people are celebrating the achievements and the contributions from the Black community. And it's also a time to spread awareness and to learn more. The whole idea that people need to learn from a Black person is skewed, is incorrect. Sit down, take time and study. Like, there's books that can educate. And I think that the most important thing, I mean, I grew up in a home where my dad said to me that if you're educated, you can never be at a loss. Like, you need to keep that quest for knowledge, you need to know more. And which is why we as Black people have also learned social intelligence. We know that we shouldn't be maniacal in our emotions in public spaces. We've learned things that have allowed people to give us a little bit more dignity, than they do. We understand that you can't act anyhow or anyway in contexts that aren't dominated or where it's only people of your kind, because we're very quick to be labeled. Oh, that's a mad Black woman, don't deal with her. That's an angry Black woman, that's a this, that's a that. So the same way that we're learning, we also think, and literally at this point, it is necessary that people take time to educate themselves. And Black History Month is a time for people to learn our histories, our traditions, our cultures. Don't go around touching people's hair. Don't ask them, can I feel your hair? Is that your hair? Oh my God, you speak English? Wow. Did you always live outside of your home country? Like, all of those things show that there's a rife ignorance in a country like Canada, where people are thinking that it's super educated. Like, there's so much to be done. So, and Black History Month is about the Black race. Any organization owes it to the community to spotlight Black people. There shouldn't be an organization at this point that doesn't take time in February to celebrate Black, even if they don't do it all year round. February should be a time when they're really centering Black people. Search within your organization, search outside your organization as well. Do something that supports the Black communities. It is important that we're also paying attention to doing our own quota as individuals to ensure that we're not propagating the idea that Blackness is a problem, Blackness is a disease, Blackness should be eradicated. We should do our part to elevate and advocate for change in the way Black people are treated, how they are conceived, how they are perceived. So there's so much to be done. There's possibilities. I mean, now it's hard to imagine a world where we're seen as the next person who is in Black, the exact same way. But the duty and the task of that change lies on us now to begin to change the way that we think about the community, and so that we're changing the narrative. Yeah. Thank you, Ryan.
Hey, thank you. Dr. Veronica, you got last word.
Yes, thank you so much, Ryan. I mean, my heart is full.
Mine too.
And I'm just so, I love Dr. Chika so much, because you just pounding and saying the right things that's just, making my heart to bounce and just be so excited and appreciative that I can have a sister. Both of us are from West Africa, right? We are from very feisty countries, Liberia and Nigeria. So it's so heartwarming, Dr. Chika, to listen to you and learn from you as well. All I want to say is Dr. Chika has said it all. My call to action is read a book. just read a book. And if you want the first suggestion, I would recommend Robin DiAngelo, White Fragility. Just read that book. Okay, it's written by a white woman, so don't come up with excuses. It's Black people writing all kind of shit. It's white woman writing about white fragility. And I think Robin, and I know Robin personally, I think Robin does a very good job in how she wrote the book, and based on her experience as a white woman, what raises him. Yes, thank you.
For people on the podcast, we've just shown Dr. DiAngelo's website. People can check out robindiangelo.com.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
She's fantastic. So just start with reading a book. And that's all I will say. That's my call to action. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Brian from Athabasca University. I'm sure you're listening.
Yeah,
thinking of us.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to Brian and Larry and Aaron Stevenson, the entire team at Athabasca University. To be honest with you, I was chatting with them, I don't know, maybe a month ago or something like that. And I said, obviously, that we're going to be recognizing Black History Month. And I said, and we have our Friday Real Talk Roundtable, and we want to put something together. And Brian goes, "Do I have a duo for you?" He says these two. And let me tell you, I want to read a couple comments before we thank you for your time. I know we've kept you into overtime here, but you've obviously made a real, you've resonated with this audience. Idris says, what an interesting point about setting those clear boundaries. He says, I'm learning a great deal here. He says the enjoyment of Black History Month is key. Learning about communities and people goes as deep as you want to go, which is an awesome point from Idris. And then I also saw one from Heidi, who said, I appreciate these two guests so much. Heidi says, I know that they may have been nervous to come on the show, but I'm so glad that they did. What an impactful experience it's been for Heidi and for this audience, for myself as well. We've been chatting with Dr. Veronica Fynn Bruey and Dr. Chika C. Daniels from Athabasca University. My gratitude to you both. Thanks for keeping it real.
Thank you for having us.
Ryan. You're
You got it.
amazing.
Black History Month.
There you go. Unbelievable. Hey, this is Johnny. Obviously, as we thank our guests, this is exactly what the Real Talk Roundtable is intended to be.
Yeah.
We had a bunch of, let me just say, to pull back the curtain for a little bit, we had some video assets and some photos and stuff we could show about Black history in Alberta. And obviously that's very important. And I encourage people, look into the communities like Wildwood and Amber Valley, and an incredible story. There's some tough, obviously, parts of Black history in Alberta and Canada to present day. Mm-hmm. But this went in an entirely different direction. You couldn't get more personal. You couldn't get more first-person perspective on this. And in my mind, there's I see a lot of people saying here, how about this from Tracy, who says education comes in many forms: formal classrooms, apprenticeships, mentorships, self-study, and yes, Real Talk podcasts. And I just felt like our dynamic duo today delivered in a big way.
Amazing. And we didn't need all the videos and stuff. They painted a picture, but
Yeah.
I really like the point of just celebrating Black history all the time. It's not just a month. And I know, as two white guys sitting here, it's hard sometimes, right? Because we haven't walked in those shoes. But I really like that point from the doctor who said celebrate it all the time. I'll be celebrating tonight. Me as a DJ, when I go out tonight, I'm going to play at Bird Dog just down the street. Shout out to them. You're going to be like, oh, there's a freebie.
Yeah, Bird Dog now owes me $2,000, but you go ahead. Go ahead.
I mean, I look at all the music I play as a DJ. All the best music came from creative Black minds: hip hop, house music, rock and roll. It's all from Black. I could go down the list. People have this small opinion of, we're living in North America. We're living in this white world. But so many creative Black minds gave us so many things.
It's so true, man.
Traffic signals, refrigerated trucks, automatic elevator doors. I'm reading a list right here. Colored monitors for desktop computers, treatment for cataracts, home security systems. I could read forever on the things that surround us that we just assume are North American white culture based. They're not. So
I noticed you would have noticed as well when the show opened today, and I won't scroll back in the chat that far, but like a lot of people, a lot of our audience members just came to the table today talking about Black Canadians that have most inspired them, and across different fields, which I thought was really neat. Sharon's recommending that people check out the Breton Museum. It looks like it closes for the winter season, but when it opens in spring, you can check out bretonmuseum.ca. A lot of you are pointing out that there have been many film projects and documentaries that have been produced commemorating and recognizing and teaching about Black history in Canada. Dwayne says that he's taken that in as well. I love this from Virtuous Sloth, who says, can we just have these guests back on some other time to talk about like a general topic? I would love to hear them again. 100%. I mean, like, we just like Dr. Daniels. I mean, like we didn't even get into her experience in investment management and architecture. She's won a ton of awards. Yes. So I understand. I take your point. Absolutely. I always feel like we keep this roster. I say a Rolodex, sort of like in jest. We don't actually have a physical one, but we keep this roster of guests and experts that when subject matter pops up, we go, well, who's best on who do we know can deliver? Who's really made an impression on this audience? And I think it's safe to say we've added 2 names to that list today. And so our thanks to them. We know this audience is engaged politically. We're going to turn the page in just a second. Want to do a bit of a week in review. We'll call it a week and a half in review for the candidates to this point, the 3 of them, all 3 of them women. Very interesting developments between Sarah Hoffman and Raki Pancholi's camp, who saw 66% of leadership candidates agreeing that the carbon tax needs to go. That's an interesting one. Kathleen Ganley appearing on the Discourse podcast this week. We're going to bring you a snippet of that. But first, of course, we got to remind you as well, and I'll have a take on Sarah Hoffman's appearance on this show yesterday, debuting her campaign video. Unbelievable stuff. I've never seen a campaign video quite like Hoffman's. I loved it. If you missed that episode, that's the February 15th episode of Real Talk. Find it anywhere in our YouTube or podcast archives. This conversation, today's show, is happening with the support of our friends at Apex Automation, who are putting out a very focused message. If you're an engineer or soon to be one, if you're in university right now, anywhere in Canada or beyond, and this podcast has found you, they're hiring right now, and Apex does things a little bit differently. Yeah, sure, they're Canada's fastest growing automation firm. I mean, that doesn't hurt their message, but their goal, the sole purpose of their team is to create long-term, trusting, authentic business relationships built on integrity that result in their clients getting the highest quality solutions to achieve optimal production and operational excellence. At Apex, people matter. Check out apexautomation.ca to learn more about the company, why they value intelligence, ingenuity, and integrity. Those are their 3 pillars. You can see more about what they do at work, and you can see more about what they do at play. This is a team that is all about bringing people together and helping them realize their potential. Check out the careers link. Could be the first day of the rest of your life at apexautomation.ca. Our friends at Complete Care Restoration want to remind you that should disaster strike, they hope it never does. They hope you never call them. But if you experience fire, flood, burst pipes, maybe you opened up a wall for what you thought might be a small-scale renovation, but you found black mold, maybe you've realized that your home has asbestos in it, your business, don't mess around with this yourself. Trust the talented professionals that are ready to respond 24/7 at Complete Care Restoration. You can find them under the sponsors tab on our website, ryanjesperson.com. California Closets is here to help you get on track with that. Do I say New Year's resolution? When do we stop talking about New Year's resolutions? I know that a lot of people...
Mine are screwed, so let's just move on.
Okay, fair enough. I'll stop shining the spotlight. But there are people, this is just me talking to myself, that promise to declutter, that promise to get organized. California Closets wants to help you with that. So whether it's a storage closet, my wife's dreaming up this new arts and crafts center that'll integrate into the rest of our cabinetry. They can do the primary bedroom walk-in or reach-in closets. They can help you turn your spare room into a home office or vice versa. Never mind what they can do with your laundry room. Never mind what they can do with your garage. That's next level stuff. California Closets does custom closets and storage solutions better than anybody else. You can find them online at californiaclosets.ca. And before we get to politics talk, our friends at Friesen Brothers want to remind you that in their 16 different stores across the province of Alberta, soon to be 17, by the way, we're going to have an announcement for you next couple of months in West Edmonton. They're going to be, of course, focusing on a couple of different things, and that includes Heart Month. Through the month of February, Friesen Brothers is proud to support the University Hospital Foundation and the Mazankowski Alberta Heart Institute. You can check out their flyer at friesen.com/heartmonth to learn a little bit more about heart-healthy products. Could be fruits and veg, lean meats, fresh fish, nutritious grains, even some of the meals pre-prepared by their Red Seal chefs. You'll find it all on their website or in one of their 16 stores. Friesen Brothers, Alberta grown and Alberta owned.
New try again in our chat saying, screaming, get them back, get them back, get them back. Talking about our guests today.
Part of me was like, and I only know just because they let us know that they had other things going on today, and obviously we appreciate our guest time. But that was you kind of got the sense that conversation could have gone on for about 6 hours.
We could have done 2 days worth of shows.
It started strong and it just held that level, which I'm so grateful for. Alberta's NDP leadership race is now 3 deep. The field, you've got 2 former cabinet ministers. All 3 of them are MLAs. Of course, former Justice Minister Kathleen Ganley first out of the gates. Then you had Rachel Pancholi, the MLA out of Edmonton Whitemud, and Sarah Hoffman on Super Bowl Sunday. You know what I realized after? I forgot to ask. I promised Charles Adler I would ask Sarah Hoffman why she launched her campaign on Super Bowl Sunday, and then I think that video just knocked my socks off yesterday, and my mind went blank, and I forgot to ask her about launching on Super Bowl Sunday. Not that it's the most important detail, but I wanted to note Rachel Pancholi dropping another bomb. She was the first out of the gates talking about Alberta maybe getting rid of its consumer carbon tax. She made the announcement exclusively here on Real Talk. Well, another one this week where Rachel has openly mused about whether or not those that hold Alberta NDP party memberships should automatically hold federal NDP memberships. Now, this has been, I think, a roadblock for a lot of people that are on the fence, maybe the moderates, maybe the former progressive conservatives. Like, we're talking about a pool, a pretty deep pool in the province of Alberta, and what do candidates have to do if they want to win this race, if they want to be the next leader of the official opposition, if they want to go up against the UCP and potentially be the next premier of Alberta? They got to fundraise, they got to sell memberships, and they got to get out the vote. And I think that this is a smart one from Rachel Pancholi. The release in part reads that membership in one political party should not require membership in another. Strong first sentence. She says Albertans who want to join the Alberta NDP, and so many of them are excited to join us in shaping our future, should get to decide if they also want to be a member of the federal NDP. She goes on to talk about her own experience buying a membership with the provincial party so she could run, obviously. And she said, I was surprised to learn that by doing so, I automatically became a member of a federal party, the federal NDP. She says, now many current Alberta NDP members support the federal NDP. And then she says, many do not. She says each member should be able to make that choice for themselves. She says, in running for leader, my goal is to build an inclusive party. She says we limit our ability to grow our party and to bring more Albertans in by forcing a federal political party affiliation on them. She says it's time to start the conversation. Let's break down barriers to participation. Let's write the next chapter in Alberta's story. Now, this is probably going to ruffle some feathers with the old guard, but to speak plainly, the old guard is not supporting Rachel Pancholi in this race. The old guard is split right now between the 2 former cabinet ministers, if what is being said is to be believed. They believe that former Justice Minister Ganley, former Health Minister Hoffman have paid their dues. They've been in cabinet. They've been here longer. They're the establishment choice. And despite the fact that Rachel Pancholi is a skilled and formidable MLA, if you believe the rumblings to be true, she does not have the support of the most ardent and steadfast longtime party members. I love the move. I think she's on to something. I think it's been a long time coming. I think that many prominent NDP elected officials, whether they're MLAs, whether they're past cabinet ministers, whether it's former Premier Rachel Notley, have seen the problematic nature of that membership. The fact that if you're going to buy a membership in Alberta's NDP, all of a sudden, You've got a membership in the party led by Jagmeet Singh, the party with which your values may not align, not even close. But you may see the Alberta NDP as, if I may say, an unofficial progressive conservative choice. That has been a barrier to participation. I like that Raki has the guts to put it out there, and I think that that's going to resonate with a lot of people. She's not afraid to be unpopular with the establishment. She's not afraid to play, if I can say, the villain early in the race, and I'm excited and interested to see how this will deepen and spur on the other two candidates. And of course, we're waiting to see more announcements as well. When you do see those announcements happen, rest assured, you'll be hearing from those candidates, at least the serious ones, right here on Real Talk. Now, the first to announce was Kathleen Ganley. And this week on The Discourse, the political podcast hosted by Cheryl Oates and Erica Barudis, Kathleen Ganley joined them. The episodes are out every Thursday. You can find them wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Johnny, you want to tee up a quick highlight? Here's Kathleen Ganley with Erica and Cheryl on The Discourse.
Typically, you see the first person out of the gate come with like a bold policy. We didn't see kind of a big bold policy until kind of a week after. Maybe walk me through that strategy.
What I really want to talk about is the economy and why the economy needs to work for people. Sometimes, as New Democrats, we shy away from speaking about the economy in our frame. And I really do think that our position on the economy, that giving more to those at the bottom and those in the middle is better for the economy. I actually think that that's a much better position. So I wanted to start there, talking about how the economy needs to work for people, talking about how we need to fund education, because actually that's fiscally responsible. You get $6 back for every dollar invested.
It's not all because of Rachel Notley that we've been incredibly successful over the last decade, but a lot of it has been down to Rachel Notley. So maybe talk a little bit about what you're trying to do differently.
Rachel has done incredible things for us. As someone who was a progressive in Calgary for pretty much my whole life, when I first put my name forward to run, there really wasn't a lot of hope that we were going to be successful. And that has changed. We are a real force in this province. This is, a real thing that can go forward. So I think that that is a really big deal. It's not just here in Alberta, it's throughout the world. We see sort of political leaders are increasingly the focus of what the conversation is about. I would like to make the conversation about ideas, about policy, about a team that is competent to lead. And I think that this is a really good moment for that, because I believe my take on the worst thing about our current government, which is, my job to criticize them. My take on the worst thing about them is actually that they're incompetent. I think I have the experience to govern. I think I have the team around me to build a really incredible future and to do the hard work that's necessary to do that. And I think I am willing and able to talk about the economy and to talk about it in our frame, to talk about why giving more to those at the bottom and in the middle does better for everyone and why that's better for the economy.
There you have it. Calling the current government of Alberta incompetent. That was Kathleen Ganley on this week's episode of The Discourse. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and encourage you to subscribe on YouTube as well. Just search The Discourse, Erica and Cheryl. Conversation yesterday with Sarah Hoffman. I think probably the most notable part of it was her debuting her campaign video on our show, where she opens, she says, "I'm not the type of person you're supposed to find in politics." She says, "I'm fat, I'm sassy, and I'm really bad at pretending to be something I'm not." And then just went from there. And we got a ton of feedback from people that said that, well, they didn't expect to see what they saw from Hoffman. I think maybe some people thought that she might grab less of the spotlight, she might not launch her campaign with as much of a bang as she did, but she had everybody's attention with her video yesterday. And if I can just say it and spell it out, one of the big successes of her releasing that video was that it had people comparing her video to Raki Pancholi's video, and that was the video that had 500,000 views within the first 24 hours it was out as well. So that's got to be a win if you're on the Hoffman production team. Now, there's still a ton of time between now and the middle of June. I think it's June 22nd that this leadership vote is happening. We expect that the candidate field will deepen. We expect that more will happen. But one of the early developments that I'm finding to be particularly interesting is that 2 out of 3 of the candidates are saying that the carbon tax formula, despite the fact, and I'm going to show you this from Sarah Hoffman in 10 seconds from now, she was sitting in cabinet, a senior cabinet minister, the deputy premier in 2015, when Rachel Notley rolled out Alberta's climate leadership plan. Hoffman says now that consumer carbon tax needs to go.
The climate leadership plan, when we brought it in, I thought was revolutionary. I thought was going to make a really big difference. And absolutely it has on methane reductions. We've got, Danielle Smith traveling the world talking about how great we are at reducing methane. Thank you to the NDP climate leadership plan. We've phased out coal-powered electricity. Again, something that happened in the climate leadership plan. TIER, or the industrial carbon rate, has been successful. We've seen it have a really positive impact. But the consumer carbon tax was taken over after we lost the election in 2019. It was taken over by the federal government. And then the federal government undermined confidence in that carbon tax, particularly when they decided to look at polling and let it decide who they were going to exempt from having to pay it. And when they exempted the East Coast, it absolutely undermined the whole thing. And I think it's important that Albertans want us to act on climate change. They want us to be leaders on this. This tool is broken. Justin Trudeau and I would say the Conservative and NDP governments haven't given it the legs that it needed. It definitely doesn't have public confidence. So I don't think we should continue with a consumer-based carbon tax.
That was Sarah Hoffman on the February 15th episode of Real Talk. You can find that in our archives if you want to check out the full interview. Interesting from Alberta Girl in the chat who says Hoffman has baggage that might make her popular in the party but could kill her public appeal. It'll be hard for her to change that. I appreciated her taking a comment, taking a question about her infamous sewer rats comment, which personally, by the way, I didn't have a real problem with. Anybody who knows exactly who she was talking about. And she was talking in particular about the Voldemort of Canadian media entities, those whom we will not name. But she was talking about the slimiest of the slimy, the lowest of the low. And I didn't mind the sewer rats comment. As a matter of fact, I texted Hoffman shortly after she apologized for making that comment, as she reminded us on the show on February 15th. I said, I don't think you should have apologized. She said, well, thank you for your opinion. Thanks for sharing. But she did. That was one I have to assume that Alberta Girl's referencing, and another would have been her involvement in, by way of being a senior cabinet minister. She was the health minister. She wasn't the ag minister, but still Bill 6, of course, which was probably the most unpopular move that the NDP made, although you may get differing opinions on what that may be. Rachel Notley described that in a recent interview with us as the end of the honeymoon. That was kind of the farm worker safety legislation. And Hoffman touches on that in our interview, our February 15th interview. If you want to hear her response to that, I encourage you to check it out. Every Friday, our friends at the Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park, that's Palisades, Nemeo, Newcastle, Westmount, and Baseline Road, give us a chance to blow off a little steam. This is a chance for you to bring the heat and give us your hot takes. These are all real emails to talk@ryanjesperson.com. It's the Flamethrower, presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. This one from Garth, who says, Jespo, if you could, I'd like to level the vibes, as we say in Jamaica, on a matter that I find is befitting for your show on Black History Month. And what I want non-Black, non-racial minorities to understand is if we truly intend to continue moving forward as humanity, we have to learn what belongs where and when. Garth says, now I'm a proud Black Jamaican who chose Canada as home, and I took the oath of citizenship. I love this country, especially Alberta, and I will vigorously defend it. Hell, Alberta is the only home that my kids know. But a little jousting in your live chat on YouTube with a guy named Plain Power on Tuesday's show had me thinking about the true meaning of allyship and what it truly means for racial majorities and minorities. Don't get me wrong, says Garth, my message is one of love. He says, to Plain Power, I'm not going to assume their gender or race, but they chose to assume mine in suggesting that my reasons for criticizing Dr. Jody Gondek, the mayor of Calgary, Ryan, your Tuesday interview with her, must be because of her race and gender. Now, I'll say to those who may find themselves in this situation, thinking you're defending somebody by invoking their race, even though they don't play that card, you need to think twice about that. We live in a time where non-Black, non-racialized minorities feel emboldened to accuse anybody of being racist when they want to win an argument. Let me clear the air, says Garth. We don't appreciate it. If you're going to be an ally, be an honest one. The accusation of racism is not something I play around with. You can destroy somebody's livelihood, their family life, even their life in general with the simple accusation of racism. And it really irked me to see somebody try to tell me that I'm a racist against another minority without even understanding who I am, all because they just desperately wanted to win an argument. It's people like those that threaten to throw racial harmony back into the dark ages as they seek to use something they don't know or have experience with as a club to beat their opponents over the head. And for those claiming to be allies and using racism as a weapon against their opponents, keep your strength. We don't need your help nor energy. One love from Garth. How about this one from Joe, who says, addressing to the people who ignore or oppose the idea of climate change, says, I hope you're right. The climate is cyclical and this will all right itself, figure itself out maybe within a generation, even though the majority of scientists and statisticians claim otherwise. I hope that this spring and summer we get enough rain that resolves Alberta's drought situation. But if that doesn't come to fruition, are we prepared for what's upon us? The Calgary Herald reporting that depending on how severe the drought is, the energy sector may need to stop producing. If there isn't enough water for the bare necessities, every aspect of our lives will be affected. Every sector will suffer, which will drive up inflation. Joe says Conservatives pride themselves as the party that opposes government overreach, opposes regulations. How will the UCP enforce water shortage compliance if it indeed does become severe? No, apologies for the apocalyptic undertones, but Marlena Danielle Smith's denialist government is not prepared for the brewing shitstorm. How do they expect to fight wildfires during a drought? It's only going to exacerbate the wildfires. No amount of arson propaganda will quell public outcry when we can't breathe, we're drowning in debt, and we're parched from a lack of leadership. People who spend most of their time putting out fires are usually the arsonists. Stay optimistic, deniers. Pray to David Parker. Hope he brings you rain. The rest of us should sing along with Baloo and worry about the bare necessities. That from Average Alberta Joe. I love it. How about this one from Shannon, whose email simply reads, excuses, excuses, excuses. She wrote in, says, I'm disgusted with flight disruptions my family's experienced with Air Canada over the past year. She says, if I was late to work this often, I'd be fired immediately. We've paid good money, over $7,000 this year, for services that Air Canada provides. We've never made it to a single destination on time once. I cannot comprehend, says Shannon, how business can be run this way. If you look at our wasted time, it totals more than 54 hours, 44 minutes. She's keeping track and says, you're telling us about technical issues, operational issues. You're able to wash your hands of responsibility, and it's unacceptable. She says, I do have one question, though. If there are that many technical and maintenance issues with your planes, should you even be in operation right now? It's believable to receive a message like this for one flight, but for each and every one, give me a break. She says these delays have caused my daughter missed university classes, missed work, lost wages, extra expenditures, but no, Air Canada is not responsible. Again, she says it's believable to claim maintenance or technical issues once, but Air Canada needs to stop lying and tell the truth and, says Shannon, be better. And this one here from Melanie, who says, I'm still experiencing so much anger with the UCP's policy toward transgender youth. We all know the true agenda behind this oppressive policy. It's intolerance and hatred toward minority groups. But to tack on this vague policy about trans women competing in sports is ridiculous. And the truth behind the add-on policy is quite revealing. Believing there's an unfair advantage with trans women competing in sports, then why not just get rid of all women's sports completely? The idea might not be as far-fetched as you might think. Zealous evangelicals have been trying to reimpose this on females for decades. I should know, after removing myself from an extremely religious upbringing and background. The last thing, says Melanie, that the patriarchy wants is for females to discover their strength, exert their independence, and achieve excellence in activities outside of their God-given roles and responsibilities. The slippery slope of taking away one group's human rights will extend to another group, then another, then another. And the first on the chopping block are trans youth and adults in Alberta. The end results could be all human rights stripped away from the undesirables and shall only remain for those deemed to be deserving by the chosen few. Melanie then signs off. Thank you for allowing me to vent my frustration. Melanie, thanks for doing it. You can send us your flamethrower. Fire it up at talk@ryanjesperson.com. And make sure when you visit a DQ in Northwest Edmonton or Sherwood Park, you let them know Real Talk sent ya. Coming up next week, we got a whole lot going on, including an interview, a big one that we can't even give you details on yet. You're not going to want to miss it. Have a great long weekend, everybody. We're back live on Tuesday.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson. Executive producer Josh Dunford. Technical producer John Hick.